Did you need a paper packet?
I don't
7:02. I think it was meant to be
25 seconds. Oh, if I could have a paper copy of the agenda.
Okay.
That's a copy of the agenda, if I could just look at it real quick.
Leonard just asked for a paper copy as well.
I don't need the packet, but the agenda would be nice. So, calling the meeting to order, roll call, please.
Director Slater-Carter,
Present.
Director Warren,
Present.
Director Penrose,
Present.
Director Boyd,
Present.
Director Blanchard,
Yeah.
Director Reddick.
Here. Okay. Public comment. And under public comment, I am going to take the opportunity to recognize November 19th as World Toilet Day. It's something we take for granted most of the time in this world, our country anyway, but some countries are not as fortunate. And there is a great deal of concern to help make toilets a reality for everyone.
I didn't extend the problem, so I read the things on that.
Yes, it's a very serious problem. And speaking of our toilets only work because we have a sewer system. Otherwise, they'd just sort of be a hole in the floor and not so nice. And oh, it's nice to have background music. At SAM, we have a couple flyers, and I would recommend that we all grab some for our respective districts. The first one is called Fight Fog, which means fight fats, oils, and grease from getting into your drain. And at SAM, and hopefully at your local agency, we have bags you can put grease in, and there are ideas on the back of this flyer for keeping grease out of the lines, including wiping out your greasy pans and plates and so on, and putting the wipes in the trash.
These are paper bags, I assume.
These are lined paper bags, so they don't leak on your counter. Kind of like old milk cartons. They don't leak.
So they're waxed or something?
It's something like that.
Biodegradable.
No, because nothing that goes into the trash dumps in this day and age degrades.
Yeah.
It's pretty much, you can do an interesting archaeological dig with a core drill through dumps.
I know.
Still get readable newspaper
I know.
from the 50s.
Oh, I heard that they've dug up hot dogs that were like 20 years old and still looked edible.
That's another problem.
Okay, well, moving on. Another flyer is called Think Before You Flush, and this is a fairly serious issue because, well, I was taking a tour of the sand plant recently and I discovered you shouldn't flush Kleenex down your drain. It will plug, it doesn't dissolve, it doesn't fall apart like toilet paper does. And some of the ultra-strong toilet papers also do not fall
Right.
apart like they should. So in this flyer is it says baby and facial wipes, all of which say flushable, are not. You can flush them, then they get stuck somewhere and they don't move.
Cost us money and wear and tear and repairs.
And there's all kinds of cleaning wipes, tooth whitener strips, all kinds of personal hygiene items, and dental floss, needless to say, doesn't. So this is a very useful flyer, and I think we should make it available. And I'm wondering if maybe next year, or maybe as part of Beverly's budget, and we can put it into her discretionary budget, we should once in a while take an ad out in the review so that we can put this information so it can reach people, and we should put it in English and Spanish and possibly Portuguese as well.
Or find out how much it would cost to just do this insert in the paper.
You know, we could check that out too.
Inserts.
First
Just
thing I
more
do with
trash.
inserts is toss them.
Yeah, more trash.
So, yeah, an ad in the first couple pages is probably something that people would notice, and I know that it's not terribly expensive, but there was a, fatberg in the sewers in,
Right.
fatberg in the sewers in London that was the size of a city bus or bigger.
Oh, I heard.
And it was a major problem, and in fact, our pipes are not necessarily new in any of our systems, and so this is something we could do to protect our oceans, to protect our beaches, to protect our streets, and everyone can contribute to helping.
Just for the record, my grandmother told me to not flush Kleenexes in 1960.
Wow.
Well,
A woman ahead of her time.
more generally, what I heard many, many years ago is that with the exception of toilet paper, if it doesn't come out of your body, it doesn't go in the toilet.
That's exactly the rule. Exactly, but a lot of people don't know it, and there's a lot of stuff on the market that claims to be flushable, and using the toilet is just so easy when you're in the restroom and so on. So, that said, do we have any other public comment? Now that I've gone on and on. Sorry, seeing none. Let's move into closed session. So we will convene into closed session.
Please don't read the whole thing, you can say for the.
Let's convene in open session, and it is 8:11. Public comment, oral comment, do we have any? I see none. Let's move into consent agenda.
Let's report out.
Oh, let's report out from, I'm sorry, I keep forgetting that. Report out from closed session, direction given to staff, and no action. Okay, consent agenda. Approved minutes for October 23rd.
I talked to Beverly, issues with minutes,
Okay, so you want to pull the minutes?
not getting approved tonight.
Okay, and the disbursements for November 13?
I have questions on, I forget 2 or 3.
Okay, and receive quarterly investment report. Do we want to discuss that? No, okay. And,
You're going through the consent agenda?
I am, and reaffirm the investment policy, and I do have a change I want to make to that.
I'd actually like to pull the warrants,
Okay,
6B.
so let's go through, let's just start, we'll discuss each of these items then, let's just go through on A, the minutes.
Staff's gonna bring it back in a future meeting.
Oh, okay, so minutes will be brought back. Disbursements. B for November 13th.
Yeah, so, I just wanted to get some clarification as to, what expenses will be covered for, Bold, Hollister, Maddow, Nelson.
These are segregated out because they are, we track them by projects, by what they are. And so, for example, the lawsuit we segregate out for having to do with the IPS project. We segregate out for the ACL that we've been dealing with the state, the civil liability. So the majority of those expenses are for those. There were some final wrap-up from the previous work that Carl had done on the lawsuit, and that was,
Yeah,
that was in
I
there,
just
but-
wanna make sure that, Half Moon Bay would not be approving any expenditures related to the defense of Sam against Half Moon Bay.
No.
If those are in there, we need to pull them out.
The only thing that's in there is what was already authorized, which was just the final wrap-up of the settlement agreement and everything.
Okay.
That's it. There,
Stipulation.
stipulation, I'm sorry, stipulation, thank you for catching that. There's nothing else in there for, related to that. Everything else we're just segregating out for the purpose of it's, you know, they're sort of specialized, they're not just general support.
Okay.
Okay,
I have questions on different items.
okay.
Rain for rent, this looks like, blue tanks. Now, between the Montero project and the Granada project, we spent a couple $1 million on storage, and I thought that one of the ways that was justified was that we wouldn't have to spend money on renting the tanks.
Well, last year we actually didn't put any tanks at Portola. We only had the 2 tanks at Montera. Because of the anticipation of doing the work for on the IPS, we might need additional storage capacity related to that work. Because there will be times where we have to stop pumping and hold while we're doing the construction. And so we wanted to make sure that we had sufficient storage, so we actually added storage this year for that purpose.
So what's the total capacity that you're renting this year?
6 tanks?
We have 6 tanks at Montero, so that would be 120,000 and 2 at Portola for 40.
Okay.
And we did that specifically because of the project. So it's not just general wet weather, it's specifically knowing we would have to hold for the project.
Okay, on the staples, there's, what, about 6 line items that say office and lunchroom supplies. 2 of the items are $108 and $253. I think we need more detail on things like that. Yeah, the same issue I had with the visa statement, which, was that even included in this packet?
Yes, it is.
And what's the,
I can answer that. I can answer your questions on the 2 bigger staples. The $108.63 is a printer cartridge, and the $253 was a new chair for me.
okay,
Other than that, it's just small items.
That's kind of good for a chair, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
maybe office and lunchroom supplies should be split into office supplies and lunchroom supplies.
We can look at the chart of accounts to see.
They're
Or
just
it's
all in
included.
office supplies, it's just
Yeah.
whatever the accounting person is typing in for that particular item or that particular invoice. And so we've just been using a generic, anything from Staples is basically office and supplies. So it could be garbage bags, it could be paper plates, it could be a chair, it could be ink cartridges. We just use the same definition for each invoice because it gets really lengthy if you list out everything on every invoice.
And staff time is pretty extensive compared to the numbers you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, right now I'm looking at, are you sure the visa detail is in?
No,
That's just-
visa detail looks like it's not
It's
in
not.
here.
I
Yeah,
just realized when it was brought up that.
yeah.
I-
This was a short week. We only had 4 days because of the holiday, and so unfortunately, it looks like that got missed. My apologies.
So we have to, can we approve everything and bring the visa detail back?
Yeah, we can bring it at the next meeting for information. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Quarterly investment report. I don't have any comments on that. Oh, wait, I do. When we get to the policy and guidelines,
Yeah.
I would like it noted in the first paragraph, investment objectives.
What page in the, it's in the PDF?
33.
I think it says 33.
33 in the PDF,
Is that as number 1, it says to assure safety of principal. Second is to retain liquidity to meet projected and unexpected cash needs of the agency. And 3 is to attain the best possible yield. I would really like it clear that those are the priority in which our investments are made. First, we have to protect our capital. I don't want somebody later going, oh, those are all equal, and so we can do some investing in some I don't know, junk bonds to get a higher yield.
Okay.
And
That's probably prevented by other line items in the policy.
maybe, but you have to read through it, and I just think putting it in the first paragraph just,
So you
Makes it
want
very
the first
clear.
paragraph to say, in decreasing order of priority,
right, or first priority is to assure the safety, second is to retain liquidity, and last and least important is yield.
so can we approve this subject to those changes?
Yes,
being
please.
added?
And then we've got then D is to reaffirm the policy, so. That would be it. So we're going to not approve the minutes on A, and then approve B, C, and D. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Regular business. A, authorize general manager to execute a contract with RF McDonald Company for the demolition of existing burner unit and purchase and installation of a new unit in an amount not to exceed $52,000.
Well, as you might recall, this was one of the projects that we had on our infrastructure plan that got pushed to next year because we wanted to make sure that we put every dime available into the IPS project. Unfortunately, it has failed. So we now have to replace it. It was a level 2 priority. What we would like to do is allocate from money that we had already identified in our budget for various maintenance activities. And the problem is if we don't, failure of the system could result in permit violations. And primarily our air quality permit.
I don't
So,
understand, if it's failed and the other one isn't working either, what are we doing?
well, it's sort of limping along at the moment.
Yeah, so it's not, so failed is, it failed and then it was repaired, and it's currently working, but the rate that it has been failing has increased significantly.
So your duct tape keeps falling off.
And we keep having to call RF McDonald, and every time we call RF McDonald, it's $1,500, $2,000 just to have them come in. If we have to do that 3 times a week, it's ridiculous. So,
So we tried to make this stretch longer, but unfortunately, between the two of them, we don't want to be caught in a situation where we have nothing.
So I have some questions for you. So which account will this be coming out of?
We have a general maintenance account where we have, like Tim said, we normally have RF McDonald come in and do minor repairs and stuff, so what we would have to do is allocate from that to this.
Okay, just going forward, I would love, it would really be helpful if we had the account number that we intend to draw from.
Okay.
And especially if we're talking about defer, or rather than going against plan, going against taking, borrowing it from an account, or shifting from maintenance to capital.
Mhm.
I'd like to get tighter on how we're accounting for exactly where these funds are coming from.
Okay.
And I'm gonna be asking for some very specific things coming out of the finance committee about maybe kind of standardized form and how we do this, so that anybody looking at this can go look at the budget and go, oh, I get it, it's coming out of here and going into there. So we're looking at an impact of 52,000, bottom line budget impact of 52,000 above what we budgeted for SAM as an agency, right? But we've had something, it sounds like we had something planned for maintenance, but it sounds like that's going up pretty good. It would be helpful in something like this to know what these call-outs have cost us. I can't tell from this report. And I gotta say, where it says both burner units have failed, I took that to mean hard failed.
Well, they
And-
actually had hard failed and we
Well,
were
no,
able,
by hard fail, let me be clear in my terms. Hard fail means the unit's, not serviceable, and we've had to take it out of production. But as I understand it, both units are actually in production, but we're having to put some effort into keeping them in production, and we're at risk of them failing at any given time. I can't tell because I don't have an engineer's report on this to tell me what condition they're in, but I caution against using the word fail if by that we mean something happened and we had to have somebody call out, but we're actually still using them.
no, actually, one of them has completely failed. This one had failed. Thankfully, we were able to get RF McDonald to come out and get it started again. We were not sure if we were going to be able to get it started again was the issue. The other one is completely unusable. Then we
So
also,
which one's the one that's been taken fully out of service? The big one or the little one?
I thought there were two and one of them is not functional.
No, they got it functioning.
Oh, okay.
Functioning.
Both of them?
My knowledge, functioning.
Oh, my apologies. The last I had heard was one was completely non-functioning and the other one was limping.
Functioning.
So,
So
My
as we
apologies.
make this kind of unbudgeted capital expense decision, I think it's really vital that we have some notion of the dollar size impact of our maintenance expenses that we anticipate going forward if we don't take this action. And I gotta tell you, I don't understand the connection to air quality concerns because the boilers and the flare are kind of only tangentially related. So
do you want to provide that explanation?
Well, yeah, so we're only supposed to operate the flare so many hours out of the year. And as like I was saying earlier, if the boilers aren't running, then the flare is operating more than we're actually supposed to let it operate. And once we pass that threshold, it can be an issue.
And there's such a long lead time on the burners that,
10 weeks.
yeah, 10 weeks. So if it fails, we don't have a backup.
So there's 10 weeks, it would be 10 weeks before you can replace these?
Yes,
About 19 years ago, I asked about getting a turbine to burn the excess gas and maybe.
Micro turbine.
Hmm?
A micro turbine to, burn the excess. So we actually did a study on that, and we don't create enough excess methane on top of what we use to operate the boilers and heat the digester for it to be viable to actually purchase the micro turbine to generate electricity.
I thought that sometime between 19 years ago and now, it was mentioned that the small turbine technology had gotten a lot better. The issue originally was because there isn't enough excess gas starting and stopping it, it would wear out real fast. But supposedly the technology is better. I'd kind of like staff to take another serious look at.
How long ago did you look at that?
that was 15 years ago that we last looked at it.
Best study.
6 months back when the vendor came and assisted.
yeah, just 6 months ago.
6 months ago.
Okay.
All right. Did anybody consider fuel cell? Because there you feed it as you have it. It's not a matter of starting and stopping.
We can consider that.
Yeah, but what would the
Yeah.
cost be?
No, we'll find out. Just, mostly it's reading a couple articles and looking up current prices, and vendors know those prices.
You're reading Burner magazine?
So just so you know, we are also having a problem with our flare. So that this sort of compounds the problem. Our flare has rust and exposure issues. So we were also experiencing some failure on that. So all of these three together are creating a bad potential problem.
So when do you propose to bring us something on that?
On the flare, we're still trying to determine what can be done.
We're in contact with the manufacturer right now. We're trying to get someone from the manufacturer out here to really assess, because RF McDonald, even though they work on our boilers and the flare, they're not really experts on the flare or on that particular piece of equipment.
Might be an opportunity if, if the flare repair or replacement is gonna cost a lot, might be an opportunity to put the methane into something that can do cogen, even if it's not particularly cost efficient. It might be against the cost of a repair. Right?
Well-
So this might be a good time to take a look at that.
And certainly when we get some options and we can put some costs behind that for the flare, then we can look at that. We haven't even been given an idea of what can be done at this point.
Well, I mean, the fundamental problem is we've got excess methane and we need to do something with it. And if we can
Productive use.
If you can put it to productive use
Yep.
instead of trying to cook seagulls, then, you know,
There's no market for roasted seagulls.
I just don't think they're that tasty.
Yeah.
What is the install date of the burners on the flare? Was that from the plant expansion or?
Yes, correct. So it's 20 years old,
Yeah.
roughly, just under.
Well, thanks for letting us know that the flare is also part of this mix.
Yeah,
Are you done, Sven?
Yeah.
What are we going to do for the next 10 weeks then? We're going to have to limp along?
What do you mean?
Well,
With
you
the
said
burners.
that
Lots of
it
duct tape.
So-
takes 10 weeks to replace these?
So, I mean, we have two boilers. We have the large boiler and the small boiler. We can run on the smaller boiler unless it has an issue. We're still relying on RF McDonald regardless, either way. If something fails, we have to call them in and they have to assess and do whatever repair they can do to help get us going.
Where are they located?
So they actually they're out of Hayward, is that Eden
Yeah.
Landing out of Hayward is where their main office is, but they have guys that respond that live down the coast. Boulder Creek, I think, is one of the closest guys, but they have guys that live in Hayward and San Francisco, so whoever's on call, that's kind of who responds.
So, I mean, to restate, correct me if I'm wrong, so we've got both in operation. They're limping along, we don't know what kind of trouble they might have. We have to do call-outs and somebody's gotta get out there and work on them anytime they fail, but we're not actually out of commission at the moment. We're just in a position where getting this thing replaced seems like it's the best idea.
Correct.
and we were at one point where both of them were,
Yeah, at one
We're
point
out.
we were, the one
And no flare.
went down and then we were having problems with the secondary. And, RF McDonald was out here for like 2.5 days.
yeah. There was a point where sort of all three of those systems failed at the same time. And we were able to get them back up. And unfortunately, the flare was not as simple because we still haven't got an idea of what to do.
Now, does it need to be, can it be replaced then?
What's that?
The
The
flare?
flare.
I'm assuming it's a piece of equipment.
Well, we were, is working now, we're able to get it functioning, and it's been functioning for the past couple of weeks, with just intermittent fails, but, we're still working with the manufacturer to try to get more detail on what we can do.
But it's 19 years old too.
It is 19 years old.
So the
also.
technology has changed.
So the technology is probably 30 years old, and yes, it has changed.
But years ago, when I was working on old cars, the same carburetor, so it was a long time ago, had been used from like 1932 until the year of the car I was working on, which was 55. And then, so, sometimes the technology stays the same and parts are easy to come by.
Yes.
But the question is, are parts getting tougher to come by for this? For the flare?
The flare is kind of, yeah, we're approaching that area where we have to sort of reach out and find what we can
So,
find.
another piece of equipment that's at the end of its useful life, that's what it sounds like.
That's
All
what-
three of them.
Yeah.
And so we had hoped that we would be able to, just with regular maintenance and attention from RF McDonald, keep it going longer.
Patching.
Yeah, it's patching, and if we get into a situation where both of them have a downtime at the same time, then, we could be in a bad way.
I think one thing that would have helped, and Director Boyd mentioned this, and I wanna emphasize that the staff report should have included, what the maintenance costs are and that we would save by spending money to replace.
I think Scott made that point
Yeah,
already.
Yeah.
I just wanna emphasize.
Well, I don't mind him emphasizing it. So I like him agreeing with me from time to time.
Well, and just, you know, I don't wanna harp on this too much, but this sort of caught us off our game. We had not planned to bring this forward, and so literally within the week this happened, we had to get information together, put the staff report together, and it was a short week with the holiday. So this was not a plan to bring to the board. This was an emergency. We've got to get on this if we're going to bring it forward.
I move per staff on item
Second.
7B, I mean 7A.
I do have one last question. Since we're taking money, if we pass this, we're taking money out of the maintenance budget. What aren't we gonna do this year? Because we don't have that $52,000.
Well, we can try to put together a list of what
We
we'll have
need
to
to
cut back
understand
on.
what the trade-off here, and here's why. If we have to go back to our agencies and say, we need to bring more money out of our pockets back home to fund necessary maintenance, because this was a P2, right? So we're not planning on doing it this year. So since we have to, basically, we were $52,000 short on the budget that we did go forward with. So, all right, where's that gonna come from? Can we trim some of the maintenance activities safely, or do we need to go dig deeper? And we really need you to answer that question for what you recommend doing.
On a routine basis.
And part of why is at our last meeting when we said, hey, you know, we ran 300,000 over, let's true that up. I know of one agency that wasn't really thrilled that several months after those expenditures, the chickens come home to roost and it's like now it's write a check. So today, right now, is a great time to say, you know, at earliest possible notice, here's an adjusting condition on the ground. We want to let you know, member agencies, so that we can decide how to go in terms of bringing more funding or.
So that's a good segue to, I was going to mention this, which is the timing of the budget. And
One last quick question, so, what was the estimated cost in the budget, in the 5-year infrastructure plan for this?
Well, that's good.
it was 55,000 is what we had originally hoped to get for this year. So, and as you
For,
can,
you're talking for the burner?
yes,
Because we've got 2 bed burners, we're only buying 1, right?
we had planned to only get the one.
Okay.
That was what was in the original
Okay.
So
request.
let's remember, we've still got another
That
bum
was the
burner.
bigger-
Big one.
And a flare.
Well,
But we haven't even got there yet. But anyway, so what I wanted to do is, this is just an anticipated schedule for the budget, and one of the things I wanted to put on, that I wanted to draw your attention to, is that at the January 22nd meeting, we will be doing the mid-year budget. We haven't formally done mid-year budget analysis, but that's one of the things I wanted to put into place, so we
Good.
could look at that. And certainly, last year that wouldn't have helped us because most everything that happened after that point. But that would be a good point for us to be able to do a check-in and where are we, and have we had some things that have come up that were unplanned, that we might need to ask for or not.
Could you put this on the website?
Well, it's in a draft because I wanted to run it by the board, obviously, and
Oh,
the member
okay.
managers to make sure that it took everything into account.
So this is a draft form, it's going to go to the managers,
Yes,
and then it will come back to the board. Good.
yes, and also the finance committee,
Yes, which is meeting on December 2nd.
yes.
Good. Okay. B, authorize, this is perfect segue to authorize purchase of a light-duty truck to replace number 5
Yes.
in an amount not to exceed $30,000.
Yes, so this is one of our response light-duty vehicles. It's a Ford Ranger. We use it for taking the sample deliveries and also, you know, running around for things. So it's not one of the heavy-duty equipment. But this wasn't the one we had budgeted to replace. We had actually budgeted to replace Sam 7, which is rusting out. And then were you actually driving it when it started having problems? Or was it someone else?
Could have been someone else,
Yeah.
but it wasn't until I tried to drive it where I went, what the hell?
It was not working properly. Took it to the dealership, or to the mechanic, and identified that it has some pretty significant engine work that needs to be done in order to make it a viable.
So you're talking about the truck that was actually accounted for in the budget, fiscally?
Well, the one that was accounted for in the budget is SAM 7. This is SAM 5.
Okay.
So what we're asking for is, instead of replacing SAM 7, to replace SAM 5, because SAM 7 looks bad and is rusting out, but the engine is still functional. This one, it's not safe. I wouldn't want staff to be driving it too much more. And it also, the cost of the repairs that it would need, well beyond any residual value of the vehicle.
What was the budgeted amount for SAM 7?
I put 30,000 in there.
It was 3,000.
Because they're both the same type of trucks. And I'm not making recommendations on a very specific vehicle, because we would be buying it through the state purchasing, so it just depends on what the dealership has available at that time. But in looking at the GSA rates, all of them are within that amount.
So realistically, the current value is negative. If we'd have to put twice as much in to fix it as you could get for selling it,
Yeah.
which kind of speaks pretty strongly against fixing it.
Right, and it does have beyond what you would normally use for these kinds of vehicles, because they get beat up pretty good. Stuff's being thrown in them, and they're all over the place.
Bless you.
Bless you.
Bless you.
And so it's already at 82,000 miles, so it's reached years, it's reached miles, and certainly has reached a point where putting additional high maintenance into it is, we're not gonna see the benefit coming out of it.
I have mentioned this before, I would really like to get a staff report on how much it would cost to build a garage somewhere on SAM property, and what we would save in maintenance and replacement costs for the vehicles. Even if only the most expensive vehicles are put in there due to space.
I'm not sure it's the cost as much as I'm not sure we have the location for it. Yeah,
Yeah, you can get pretty cheap garages from
Yeah.
Costco and Home Depot.
Butler
actually.
buildings.
yeah. It's more a placement. So certainly we can look at that going forward, but for staff safety, I don't want them driving a vehicle could stop working.
Would this $30,000 cover like a fully rigged vehicle, toolboxes and things like that?
It depends on which one I can get. If I can get one of the Ford Rangers, then we would have some additional money to
They
put
don't
into
make
it.
Ford Rangers anymore.
They'll make
I'm sorry,
Rangers
not Ranger, F-150, sorry. It would be an F-150 replacement.
I mean,
And those are
if
much
guys are
bigger.
using toolboxes and stuff like that now, on the current truck, you probably wanna replace.
Yeah. The two Ford Rangers that we have, preferably a Ford Ranger would be nice, they don't make them anymore, so the least expensive of the vehicles on the list are the Ford F-150s. But they also, through the state, there are two small light-duty vehicles through Toyota and Nissan, so it really just depends on what's available.
The advantage to Ford is they have gone to an aluminum body, so you won't have the rust issues. And they've had the aluminum body for a couple of years now, it's not the first year.
Right.
But is the size of the F-150 really appropriate for this
The,
specific purpose?
the gas mileage is pretty equivalent anymore.
Yeah.
And it would give, the additional size would probably give more flexibility.
And there's about a $6,000 or $7,000 difference between the Ford F-150 and the Toyota and Nissan, even though they're smaller vehicles, they're more expensive.
Right.
So-
I am concerned, Leonard, are you done?
Yep.
Okay. I am concerned, Tim very kindly showed me, good old number 7 and number 5. I consider number 7 to be more dangerous. The places that the rust is occurring are in the supports for the windshield.
Mhm.
And that's a dangerous, dangerous location for rust to be occurring, and it's not anything that, with these trucks, that you would want to fix. I think a better thing to do would be to spend less money, the $7,000, to repair the engine, because if the brakes are good, the transmission is good, and the body's decent, you can get maybe 3 or 4 years of use out of it, so you're paying less money per year to be able to use it. And then there might even be some residual value to sell it. But the number 7 is something that we should be replacing sooner. Tim tells me it runs, but I think it was a good call. Since we have had this unexpected $52,000 cost that we're going to have to sort of fudge things around. We had a $300,000 at the last meeting. I think we need to be, as Leonard mentioned in an earlier item, really watching our pennies. And I would recommend, as I said, fixing the engine. It's a better body, it looks better, and then planning ahead for replacing the number 7.
I'd like to hear from Tim on that.
Which part?
Which one do you think we should?
Number
replace
7 or?
first?
So, 5, which is the one, so the problem with 5, just for clarity, the problem with 5 is that it has low compression in cylinder number 2.
From rings, or?
It could be rings or valves, I don't know. To actually do the repair, that's what, and this cost estimate came from James Ford, the $6,000 cost estimate, that's turnkey out the door, done, right? Could it be done cheaper elsewhere? Don't know, because you go to Ford and you get the warranty that comes with the dealership and everything, so the crate engine, all that. That being said, 5 is physically, it's in better shape. Yes, it is, it's older, it's 2 years older, right? Yeah, 5 is 2 years older than 7, but 7, as Catherine pointed out, the A-pillars is what's part of the structural integrity of the cab, or the safety, zone of the driver-passenger compartment area is compromised by the rust. I mean, you can stick your finger through some of the holes in that rusted area, so obviously the safety is compromised on that vehicle. Does it run? Yeah, but does that answer your question, or should I go
It does
further into
answer my
detail?
question, and I appreciate it, thank you. I think I'm agreeing with Catherine on that. Safety is critically important, and as opposed to having a truck that just stops running. Much better to have a truck stop running than to have one cause damage to human beings.
Yeah.
Well, actually,
Or in
the
the
point
event
was
of-
we were looking at, both of them are at the point where we shouldn't be
Yes,
driving them. So it was
yes.
really, which one do we replace first? And
Right.
it was simply a matter of, this is the older of the 2 vehicles, we'll replace it first, and the other one can sit there until we have funding to replace it, more so than really driving either of them.
Why not
Right.
replace both of them?
We just didn't have the funding for it this year. And we did put the 30,000 in there. I already was planning on replacing one of the 2. So it just seemed like this was the older of the 2, had the more miles on it. And the other one, we could park and only use it if we absolutely necessarily had to, as opposed to putting any more money into vehicles that are well past their life.
Is there a possibility we might negotiate, buying 2 trucks at the same time and getting a better deal on 2?
Now, it's already part of the state contract, so it's already a pretty good deal. The benefit would be, obviously, if the least expensive that we could get it would give us the capability of potentially having money to put towards another truck. So for example, if we were able to get the lesser of the vehicles, the Ford F-150s, it's only about 20,000. So potentially there could be some additional funds that could go towards replacing the other vehicle. But they may not have any, and we may have to get one of the Nissans or the Toyotas.
Well, then you may want to talk to James Gordon and see if they have a trade-in that you can get for significantly less. Leased cars and so on can be, and maybe not necessarily going through the state. Or this, you know, anyway, I would recommend, my recommendation is to fix the engine because you'll get, my guess would be 3 to 5 years or longer with an engine as long as the rest of it's in good shape. And that allows us to plan our finances a little bit better. We've got some major costs coming up soon. And as Scott was saying, you know, 10,000 here, 10,000 there, pretty soon it's 100.
You know,
You put 300,000 on your car?
197,000.
Oh.
It was 19 years old. Yeah.
We have 10 minutes left, I
Yeah.
just wanted to point that out.
The staff report says rebuild or replace the engine. I'm wondering if it was replaced with a used engine, you know, how much is the
You don't
labor
wanna, you
part
don't
of
wanna
that?
do that. It's the
No.
same labor as for a new one.
Yeah,
Okay.
and most of it is labor.
Yeah.
And they'll stand behind a new engine, they won't stand behind an
So,
old engine.
Yeah.
Then the other thing you mentioned, it's fairly well documented that the most economical way to own a car, and I think this probably applies to the more expensive trucks too, is to buy it 2 years old and drive it into the ground. So, you know, we've driven it into the ground, but instead of getting these new, if we could get it 2 years old, it's already lost a substantial part of the purchase price by virtue of it being 2 years
That's how
old.
I do it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, maybe we can get 2 trucks that are 2 years old for a lot less than getting them new.
We'll
Well,
certainly look
there's
at it,
fancy
you know, I mean.
Yeah, and certainly, that's why I didn't recommend a very specific vehicle, is because I want to have the opportunity to work with the dealers using both the state contract and other options. But just looking at the general price, I knew for sure we could afford to replace one of the vehicles. So certainly if I have the opportunity to take advantage of something like that,
I would keep your eye on that, see if there's
Yeah.
a possibility to.
Do we need, Carl, do we need a motion, or is this discussion enough direction?
Where are we on what we're
It's
actually?
to authorize the general manager's
That's-
purchase, so it's a motion.
Yeah.
But can we,
Because I'm just gonna say, the cheapest car you can buy is the one you already have.
Yep.
And me personally, I've got no problem saying, let's replace the engine. So, and having just authorized $52,000 of unanticipated, I want to replace things that are shot, but in my own dealings, I fix a car. If there's not something fundamentally wrong with it, I fix a car. That's what I do. And if we can get, an engine, if the engine is the problem with the vehicle, and if that's the only problem with the vehicle, I would change the engine.
Is that a motion?
It's a drop-in.
I agree with that, but I also don't like the idea of staff driving a truck that is potentially dangerous.
Oh, no, but
That's
see
the other one.
but I'm talking about Sam 5, not Sam 7, which is
Yeah.
the rusted out one.
I get
Talking
it,
about buying
Okay.
7,
I
fixing
know.
the engine and, yeah.
so buying 7 and fixing.
and there would
Right,
be enough.
and what I heard Beverly say was that we can actually leave one of these parked, not use it, and then make sure the other one is drivable.
So park 7 and drive 5 with a new engine.
Yeah,
And the problem would be.
that way no one's driving an unsafe vehicle.
Yeah, we
Because I'm
would-
with you on that, there's no, when you said you could stick your finger in it, you better not. The last thing we need is you getting
Get your tetanus
a
shot.
rusty cut, you know?
Oh, he's so immune to tetanus.
So I would just say if you can get something used, you know, that's.
Okay, so we have a motion.
What
Scott made a
exactly is the motion?
Scott made a
Yeah, what is
motion
the
to
motion?
replace the
Motion
engine
to
on
repair
number
5.
5.
And keep, and
I'll second that.
Okay.
And we should bring what happens to number 7 back on a future agenda.
Can we amend the motion to
Cost for
say
replacing
replace or
numbers.
repair whatever's more
We can look at number 5, get them together.
cost effective could-
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
How are you
We're gonna
gonna,
look at both.
how are you gonna
Not
fix
7.
7 without buying new?
And,
Yeah.
bring,
Five.
and so.
They might be able to repair the engine, that's not clear.
No.
No, you can't, it's a
I
replacement.
want the warranty.
Yeah.
If we do this, it's
Alright.
gotta be, I mean,
Right.
yeah.
It's not, yeah. Anyway, so we have a
That-
motion to replace the engine on
Definitely
number
on that.
5, and we have a second on that, and then, all, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and then to bring back the costs for replacing, the various cost options for replacing number 7 to a future agenda. Okay, and we don't, we've got 6 minutes left. I'm going to recommend that the contract with Leschowitz and Singh be given to the finance committee to review first.
Loading us up with stuff for this meeting in this.
You know, you haven't met all year.
It'll be 6 times in the next 6 weeks.
That's right.
You know, I would be okay with that, except that, looking at the JPA, I don't see that it's within Sam's authority under the JPA to do, you know, a rate study. And we're not a special district, we're
No,
JPA.
We all agree.
I agree with you. I will say that I read through the RFP and one of the responses, the lower cost one. There are elements to that I'd like to bring back to recommend that we consider in terms of a cost of service study, so that when we're talking about how we allocate costs and such, because I mean we have to budget and we have to be sure of this gets paid by ownership or this gets paid by flow or whatever. I can see some potential merit to going out and doing this, but anything that talks about a rate study, everybody thinks like, what, you're talking about direct billing
Thumbs down.
customers and stuff, it's like, none of us are. But in reading through the document, that's not what I saw it to be, so I think it
That's
might be.
not that's not what I see, and, you know, we don't really have a real capital improvements program. We
Mhm.
might wanna look at an estimated cost, you know, we had a sort of a list of projects that we might do, and that got
Well, that's the
jiggered around.
value that I
and-
saw in what I saw in the one response that I read in detail. It was that, like, here's how you know how much
Yeah.
you're likely to be spending and having a budgeting and financing approach based on our understanding of what the agency does and, you know, year over year. So to me, it was more like a
Cost of-
budgeting and finance
The cost of
study
service.
than I think the term rate study, we all know rate studies from our own agencies to mean something a little different. So I think the terminology mashup was a problem.
I also think that it would have been good to bring this concept to the general managers meeting, and have a discussion there about it.
Couldn't agree more.
And the scope,
Mhm.
rather than just issuing an RFP. And,
Well,
you know, I don't even think that the two that responded actually have the qualifications to do what you're talking about now, so.
Well,
I
I'd
think
love to
one
discuss that
does.
with you, because I mean, I did a cursory read of it, but I came up with a different impression, but
They do water, they don't really have much experience with sewer. In any case, we might tie the whole
I'll look at it again with
discussion
that
to
in mind.
a capital improvements program.
Well, Bartle Wells does sewer, and that's where Catherine Singh came from. So she has the sewer experience, she's been with Bartle Wells, she was with Bartle Wells for quite a while. But I agree, I got pretty upset when I read the item, and then I read the proposals, and I thought, we do need to know what the cost of service is. One of the things that I would like to see for Sam is a long-term cost of service study, so the agencies can do better planning.
Well,
I
would
don't
certainly-
like this year to
Yeah.
year.
Right.
Yeah, well, we all know we'd like a real 5-year capital improvements program.
Exactly.
But I would definitely, you know, rather than the finance committee taking a stab at it, maybe have the general managers consider the information that would be needed first, and then bring that to the,
Well, that's fine. I mean, I think all I was thinking about
Yeah.
doing with it was, I mean, as Catherine was talking about it, was go through it, pick out the things that might be useful for us to be able to have some predictability to our budgeting. Like, looking at this, I know having having worked with our economist for a number of years, you know, they're like, they can step way back and say, you need to plan on this much. You know, regardless of the specifics, you should be planning on spending this much every year for this kind of activity. And that's just been really helpful, and I think here, we just don't want to be surprised every year to year about how much budget fluctuation there is. With what we have to do with 218, that's just really hard. So if we can kind of level it out, put it on a track, and have some 5-10 year vision of it, I think we'd all like that better. So, tell you
I'm
what,
totally in favor of getting it off the table for tonight.
we'll pick through it, see if there's any elements we want to highlight. I love the idea of taking it to the managers. So rather than try to drive it down that path, the path that we're seeing as a recommendation tonight, we'll spend some time with it. We'll learn more about the specifics of what's in there, and at the same time ask Beverly to take it back to our managers and start that conversation.
But Leonard?
Cart, of course, we need to have an approved 5-year CIP. This board may have approved it, it was never sent to the member agencies, I checked. And so, you know, I agree with Director Ruddick that this is not appropriate. I wanna see an approved 5-year CIP first, and then that will drive how much money Sam is gonna need, and we can, and you know, in terms of the rates, that's a member agency thing anyway.
It is, yeah.
I would give you, having spent the time I did in reading through this material, I would say that the terminology, it's really important to see the sensitivity here at the board among all 3 agencies about the term rates.
Well, it says that in here about 8 times.
Right.
Let me
It will
finish
be
my thought,
changed.
please. I've got a thought to finish, and it's just that if we cast this in terms of cost of service study, I don't think anybody's gonna have that same kind of allergic reaction to the terms. And then we can scope it in terms of what we need in terms of budget predictability, so that we can plan and finance and all those other things.
And I think while working on the format for this, I could see that this could become a standard kind of service that Sam does every 3 to 5 years. I see that, Beverly. I think that we could be doing the 5-year CIP at the same time. They could be done in parallel,
They should
because
be done in parallel.
it's just a matter of putting numbers in.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. I think we're trying to find some normal way of getting through this.
Right.
Okay, do we have any reports that we need to talk about? Okay, motion, Debbie.
So I wanted to just talk about topics for future agenda board consideration. And then there's, let's see, that would be page 120 of the packet, item number 7, slated for December 11th meeting, discuss 5-year infrastructure plan and provide direction. It seems to me there ought to be a discussion among the general managers about that first too, before it comes to us.
There will be, it will be at this month's meeting.
Good. Do we need any other comments? Reports?
Just mention, I believe we got a distribution of the workshop that we had on Saturday. Part of that was the infrastructure plan, and so if your staff hasn't seen that yet, we
How about
have
the, you're talking about the meeting?
I'm sorry.
Saturday,
Yeah, I'm
the
saying that
strategic plan.
there were some handouts on Saturday, and in there was the infrastructure plan, and we didn't talk about it on Saturday, but we all have copies of it. So that might be handy to show to your staff and your engineer and such if they haven't noticed it already. That way, when they come to that meeting, they'll walk in with something already in hand.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we can get it electronically so we can just,
It's on the website.
it's on the website. And you said that you were having trouble getting all the managers for our December 7th or 9th meeting?
Yes.
I can talk about that a little bit, and, so, after talking to, our staff, I think the feeling was that, again, that discussion might better be had among the general managers first. And, discuss those issues and maybe reach some agreement on some of the issues before actually coming to the policy board for direction. I think the feeling was that getting the policymakers and the general managers in the room together and mixing up the two sets of issues and concerns might not lead to a very productive meeting, and that it might start with the general managers first. So there's not, shall I say, much support.
So is there a
for the-
chance that the managers can meet and have that discussion in advance, and do we still have the meeting of the 10 in early December?
There's resistance to the concept of the meeting, you know, the,
Because
General
I mean,
managers and the board.
as we all discussed,
I agree.
yeah.
well, as we all discussed on Saturday, the point is we've got, if there's going to be a change up in who's participating in the collections, we've got to do that planning like right this minute.
Yeah, well, so the general managers should have that on their plates to talk about, you know, like ASAP, before
the date
coming
of
to the
your meeting?
policymakers.
But I don't think that's a general manager issue, I think that's a policy issue. And yes, the meetings we were proposed were just.
No. When
Next
was-
week,
Oh, the board meeting, this,
The general manager's meeting is,
next week,
I need
On
to,
Friday.
I need to clarify.
Oh, no, it's this Friday, I'm sorry, it's
the-
this
it's
Friday.
in 4 days.
Yes, it's this
on the
Friday.
15th.
And I also don't think that, after thinking about it, that we might get sort of honest and open discussion about the issues too. I can imagine, given the dynamics of managers, board members, that, you know, people might not, you know.
I
fully-
gotta say, it's time for us to saddle up, because if we're talking about half of the collections team going the wrong way, we're gonna have, as we talked about on Saturday, we're gonna have very significant repercussions to what that means for the budget
Why
and
don't we start with the general managers? There's a meeting coming up. We don't have staff availability for any time soon, unfortunately, so
okay,
that's
we've,
the other problem.
we've got to insist that this issue come to the members of this board as early as possible, because the window for making changes in the coming
Yeah,
years
I know.
is
I've made that
rapidly
case,
closing,
yeah.
and right now, we're open to the discussion, but if we go a few more weeks, we're not gonna be able to be open to the discussion.
Well, it seems to me that there's a lot of meat here for a general manager's meeting.
Oh, I think they should meet, I'm cool with that, but I wanna make sure we keep the
Yeah.
other meeting on the books, and if people think they can't come to the meeting and be productive, they need to send someone else who will be productive, because we need to have this discussion.
I think it's critical for, I know for Montera, as past treasurer, that we start our budget planning now. Leonard?
I don't understand why each member agency manager can't independently negotiate a contract with Sam. And I need to clarify an answer that I gave at the strategic plan update regarding Granada and the collection system. We won't be first to bail, but if another agency bails, then my answer is no longer valid.
We totally understand that, you know, there's timing issues here. It can't be done, you know, abruptly, without notice, all those things. I think what staff would like to do, and what Deborah and I would like to do, is start with a conversation with the general managers.
So hopefully some of that can happen on Friday, and then we can find out as quickly as possible whether or not we're gonna be able to get the 10 together, because we need,
Our meeting's canceled for this month, so I don't know what Chuck's availability is to come here.
It should be, you know,
Skype?
Yeah, maybe.
Skype in, but this is mission critical. This is not something for anybody to mess around with. This needs to get done.
Yeah, well, and we're talking about people. We're talking about the collections crew. We're talking about families.
yeah.
And it's not just
Yep.
timelines and remote stuff. It's people who live in this community, it's people who live here, who we see at the grocery store and we don't even recognize.
Yes.
So, for that, they deserve our loyalty to be able to know what's going on in their lives. Mission adjourned, we're adjourned.